So we got a nice little change of pace today. Shout out to Big Boy IQ for actually sending me this video. And you all see the title right there. The law finally caught up. Every AAA is in trouble. I think this person gonna be talking about microtransactions and some law that's actually being passed to help protect us as consumers. Because we could all agree that microtransactions and the pay-to-win system is destroying gaming right now within the current climate. Not just 2K, but every other AAA title. But anyways, man, let's see what we could take from this, of course. So without further ado, let's react to this video.
Welcome back.
If you don't know, it's brutal, sim on the scene, wicked and mean. With the next video, want is YouTube thing. We got 2K news and rumors. Don't forget the tutorials and tips. Turn your my player to a bad man and rule the sticks. No matter the mode, record or park, even my career brute will get you a good start. Hit the like button, don't forget the notifications. Comment down below and welcome to the Brute Squad Nation.
Everyone, today's video is a true bombshell for the games industry. This is one of those things that can have true impact, so let me explain. What just happened is the European Union just rewrote the rules on premium currency in games. Of course, that's the home of Ubisoft, of CD Projekt, of DICE, of
2K,
Remedy, and so many other companies. And make no mistake, the new rules that they have just laid out could change gaming utterly. Actually change the games that you play. So you know those bundles where
I want to try to not pause as much as possible. Just want to say that, of course, I paused to say that because it's a 17-minute long.
You've got to buy more currency than the item that you want costs, or perhaps the idea of limited time events, of no refunds and digital purchases. These are all being fought against by legislators. And when the EU takes action, it's a large enough block that it can reverberate around the world. And as evidence, how's that USB-C charger on our phone working out? There's a lot to talk about. Strap in. This one could actually, honestly, pretty good. Oddly enough, you've got EU legislation to thank for the standardized phone charger situation, and for many, the ability to play.
A lot of people don't know that iPhone would have still be going with that lightning nonsense if it wasn't because of European rules and stuff like that.
ROMs on their iPhone. But now we seem to have EU legislation to thank for premium currency being threatened. So here's what went on. In September 2024, the EU proposed the Digital Fairness Act that was targeting all the practices online that make using digital services miserable. And in particular, it called out dark patterns in video games as one of the targets. And that's basically the gross manipulative techniques that trick and strong-arm money out of people, obviously especially applying to people who are not yet adults. And this is fairly weighty because in the EU alone, games are obviously big business. Revenues have been going up in the EU. Online game spending in 2018 represented 74% of turnover coming from online revenue, and 83% by 2022. That's all of those fun, dark patterns actually working and getting digital currency money out of people. But those dark patterns target the most vulnerable people the most. And there's no one more vulnerable in the eyes of the law than children. Children who spend an average of €31 a month on online games, according to data from Video Games Europe. Well, that's all? That's all? Actually went down from 2023. I guess that's good. Everyone's feeling a little bit of the economic pinch, but it's not stopped the EU from taking action to protect kids, basically, from predatory premium currency models. And in situations like this, there's often a great offender, right, that is held up as an example of something doing everything wrong. So you might wonder, is it an Activision game? Is it Ultimate Team from the EA football games? Maybe it was Roblox. No. No, today, it's a game about horses. It's called Star Stable. You've probably never heard of it, but if this all does turn out good, we'll have the horse girls to thank. This is Star Stable Online. It comes from a Swedish developer called Star Stable Entertainment, and it is the game that may have just rewritten rules and monetization in the EU. So yeah, thanks, horse girls. Now, it turns out that Star Stable just uses all of the premium currency tactics in the book, which makes it a pretty awesome example, right? Especially because it is targeted at a younger audience. So in March 24, the Swedish Consumer Agency filed a complaint with the EU-wide Consumer Protection Cooperation Network. That's a mouthful. And that complaint alleged that Star Stable Entertainment were targeting children and using harmful commercial practices that breached EU consumer regulations.
What does that sound like to you? That sounds just like 2K.
Now, the findings corroborated much of those allegations. They found that the game made direct appeals to children in their ads, that they were using pressuring techniques like FOMO, which is particularly despicable when it's not, on adults, and there was a lack of transparency on purchases and loads more things. I mean, here's an example of one that's particularly rough. They were responsible for influencers promoting the game to kids without any disclosure of the spending risk. So, in short, it's bloody well damning. Star Stable Entertainment now have a month to address complaints and propose solutions with their game, but what matters for our purposes today is the Consumer Protection Cooperation Network, we can just call the CPCN. They have laid out what they want. So I'll spell it out via an example. This is what should happen in the ideal world. You, dear gamer, want to buy yourself a new horse. You see that your new horse costs 300 star coins. The store tells you that's around £5, so it just lets you buy 300 coins exactly. You buy exactly what you need for the horse, rather than the current bundles that exist of 200 coins or 400 coins, meaning that you always have to buy with some wastage, which just ends up giving the company more money.
Alright, so now I've got to translate this to 2K because y'all know I'm a 2K gamer. So let's say a build costs 300 and something K, right? Which it does, right? A build around 367,000 VC right now. There are no packages for that exact same amount. So now you got to go buy a 450 pack. So you're going to have a bunch of extra, which means you're literally spending extra for just one build that you want specifically. Now I'm just being more specific with the build, but it also applies to packs, different packs that are being sold in my team and all that stuff. So now you gotta be more specific in the pricing, and not only that, they will tell you the dollar amount when you're spending it, y'all. So now it's not just you spending in-game currency, it's you understanding that you're spending, this is actually real world money that you're spending. This is how much the value is in real world money. So that bill that I just mentioned, that 450 is like $100. I can't even make this up. Is it $100? So here's the pricing, right? I don't want to misquote anything, right? So I was right, $100 for the 450K, right? So I was right. Oh, I thought I was a little off, but here it is. 450K is $100, right? It's very good that you get the information cleared up. You know what I mean? I don't want to misquote anything. So $100, but you don't necessarily have to spend. I think that's extreme and that's a lot of money still for a bill, but that's near here or there. That's a different conversation for a different time. But basically, what you will be seeing is you will be spending, let's say 75, you're going to use $75. You will be, technically you're spending $75. They're going to tell you that you're spending $75 of that as well.
So in short, no obfuscation bullshit, no weird tactics. And worst of all for these companies, this will have them bloody well shaking. You'd have to have a refund policy, both for the coins and the horse. And none of this would be pitched as a limited time event where
you're trying to tell me I'll be able to refund my bill if I don't like it? Imagine if that is law. Imagine if now, even if you create the bill and spend that VC, you're like, nah, I want my money back. I want my money back. I want my coins back. And you could take and, keep this bill. I don't want the bill no more.
You have got to get the thing right now. So that's an example then of how these policies should be applied, and each is indeed a massive win for consumers. But that would not matter if this amounted to nothing. You could look at all this and think, right, so some Swedish horse game has got a slap on the wrist. No, it's more than that. This seems to have backbone. So here's the big important bit. These solutions are the backbone of what the European Consumer Organization calls key principles for trustworthy gaming environment. And these could cause huge problems for anyone who is using premium currency. When I say this could shake the foundations of the game industry economy, I absolutely mean it. So these, which I'm going to spell out for you, are the minimum requirements for purchasing and using virtual currencies in the EU. And what's neat is the philosophy behind them. So the CPCN considers these premium currencies as an equivalent to the real money that is used to purchase them. And
now, this is big for 2K fans because remember, 2K said that this is not real world money. They said it. Ronnie 2K said it. They said it. That they don't consider virtual currency real world money. They consider it real world money. This is big. This is big.
And that for them means that they are just as worthy of legal scrutiny. So you can see how that is, in a way, a mindset shift that paves the way for actually treating these as they are. So just think about the last game that you played that had a premium currency in it. Whatever that game is, I want you to keep it in mind. And with that in your mind, I'm now going to go through the various different practices that this targets. So, prices for premium currency packs that are a little more than the available product. So you've got to buy extra coins, extra gems, whatever it may be. Obfuscation of how much currency is worth by always pairing currency with other items or multiple currency options. As an example, I think World of Warcraft may actually fall for that because it includes Trader's Tender in one of the new mount bundles. Another.
Okay. So it's more like, we got different game modes. For example, the My Team coins, plus we got the virtual currency.
One, a complete lack of a refund option for making currency purchases or even for in-game items. So there.
That's 2K. That's 2K to me right now. I can't say, nah, I made a mistake on this bill, or I kind of regret spending on this bill. I need to get my VC back. That's 2K right there. Or people purchasing packs. Oh, this could get deep, y'all. This could get deep.
There would have to be a refund policy. That's something none of us are used to in these games. Also,
Facts.
FOMO practices to encourage buying, those are going to be looked at, so some of those may no longer be allowed. And all of these practices are now something that the EU can hold against developers and publishers, even more so if the parental controls of said game are not up to scratch. So it's less a case of me saying, can you think of any game that falls into those categories? And it's more me saying, can you think of a game that doesn't fall into those criteria? It's fairly humongous, which might indeed be the point here. We know this is something the EU have been thinking about in other circumstances than just Star Stable. As an example, in September 2024, the European Consumer Organization published a report on popular online games, and in that report, they targeted Diablo 4, EA Sports FC 24, Minecraft, Fortnite, and a bunch of others, and it was all about how the...
Why did I mention 2K? Well, I'm excited for this. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I am really excited for this, man. I know it's just EU, but usually this influences everything else in the world. Trust me. They're the ones who really hold these companies accountable first before it starts. Because when Apple wanted to keep that Lightning port, and EU said, nah, it don't make no sense. We're not going to allow y'all to sell your phones with this Lightning port when everybody is using Type-C. Eventually, they shift, and everybody else now have that iPhone with that. So that's just one example, and they do it in a lot of different scenarios as well. So I'm really excited for this. This actually could really benefit gaming overall and the consumer spending.
Virtual currencies work. They were not thrilled on what they found in those games, right? Because many of them, well, they did the same things that, Star Stable did that we do not like. And that straight up means we can say that Electronic Arts and Blizzard Entertainment are being directly targeted by this body. Really is something. So it's no wonder that the BEUC will be holding workshops to help European companies implement these new principles, because it seems they may actually have to implement them. Everything that they previously thought was acceptable pretty much now isn't. And here's the shocking thing, that's not my commentary. That is what the industry response has been. So we know they are shaking in their boots. It ain't surprising the industry bodies aren't thrilled about this, and a big shout out to one of our Belgrade Games members, Neo Nebulosa, for directing us to this stuff. So, the European Game Developers Federation and the Video Games Europe, two groups basically, they've published a joint statement that expresses their disappointment with the findings. Let's read their statement. Quote, "We are disappointed by the lack of engagement from the CPC network in creating these principles, which introduce new legal theories and misguided interpretations of EU consumer law that will create confusion and disruption for European customers." Sidebar. Oh no, we're going to be disrupted by sort of annoying predatory stuff going away. What an awful disruption. To the statement. It will also present a challenge to the industry's future growth and could even deprive millions of consumers access to their favorite games. Now that last bit is the interesting thing. So understandably, right, these groups, representing the most powerful players in the industry, did quite like things the way that they were. Change is dangerous, especially to the bottom line, and especially change like this. But in a way, they're not inherently wrong. It is true that audiences do actually understand premium currencies by and large right now, and when implementing currencies, these companies were following, their best legal guidance, and now that guidance has changed. I guess just like how so many phones had like a bespoke charging cable until the rules just changed in the middle of the game. So now they've got to get used to these new rules. And what'll sting is the impact on their bottom line. They're not wrong about the potential impacts of all of this. Now, big companies like Ubisoft can probably absorb the costs of any legal challenges or damage from rebuilding their premium currency systems. They'll probably spend a whole lot to try and figure out ways around these principles. As for smaller companies, well, they may not find that so easy. But where things will be dramatic is the group's final warning, because it's the most threatening one. It's the idea that players in the EU may just be locked out of video games. They'd say with a game like Overwatch, right? They would simply choose to geo-restrict access to the game rather than change their monetization model or to just continue the game as normal and risk EU lawsuits. It could just be they look at the EU and think, you know what, we make enough from the States and other countries, we really don't need them. That being said, the EU population is kinda huge. Overall GDP is obviously a very, very flawed metric, but as an example, right, just Googling this here in 2024, the EU's nominal GDP was about 17.9 trillion and 1/6 of global nominal GDP, which is quite a lot of money, and a hell of a lot of that GDP globally will be in other countries like, say, China, where a lot of these companies will not be able to go in and directly monetize. That could actually mean that they will feel the need to change. And in a way, there are two wolves inside me who are fighting, right? I suppose one of them is the pragmatic wolf. The other one is the almost like the last vestiges of some sort of libertarian idealism that says, let the market decide. If the gamers do not like the bad practices, the gamers shall not partake in them, and the market will solve the problem. And I wish that was true, but I feel there's almost a...
That's not true. Because these companies understand human psychology and know how to manipulate the average person. And they know how to manipulate kids. When you look at my team, the bright lights, all of that casino tactic they use, those are casino strategies that they use for my team. All the feeling good and that little, that sensation you get from pulling something good versus you being disappointed that you're not and giving you the need to just keep trying. Casino tactics. They manipulate us a lot in these games. So there have to be something in place to protect the consumer from even themselves, let alone these sharks out there, these companies.
Faux idealism in so much of that, because these psychological hooks, these psychological triggers, they do actually work. We're in a world where you can very easily make, I think, some sound enough philosophical arguments very much against regulation and all of that. And I totally get that. I'm fairly sympathetic towards that in many cases. But the thing is, we've also got to be pragmatic. And a part of that is being a bit humble about the human condition. And the fact of the matter is, these practices are not popular. People do not like them. Yet, people's behavior does continue. And these obviously are bad. And as people who enjoy video games, we see that as these types of practices derive more and more revenue, they then become what the companies focus on. And that is worse for the actual video games.
Boy, this sounds like exactly what I said about 2K about a week ago. Literally spoke about this just a week ago on one of my videos. That I understand the profit, I understand, but eventually the company leans more towards that. And you see it affecting 2K drastically. And again, this could be, you could apply this to multiple games because this is what's going on in the gaming community. But of course, we play 2K the most, so I feel it more in 2K, so I could speak about it more on 2K. And yes, this is what we see with the pay to win aspect, with the boost within the game that you have to consistently spend VC on, with so much different facets, with the amount they reward you after you win games into the park, which certainly kill that game mode that I used to love. And it makes me look at the game completely different and approach it completely different because of these practices.
Because I suppose in a way, how much of game industry revenue comes essentially from psychological manipulation and these various business strategies that are designed to rake in revenue in a way that's not like really tied to the experience of a game that you purchase. We've just seen the share of that increase and increase and increase, and it's no wonder that as that is increased, the rest of us have become less and less satisfied with games. So in a way, if this does hurt the revenue of a bunch of companies and unfortunately leads to a bunch of job losses because these types of practices are no longer viable, good riddance. Good riddance, absolutely. Let the companies fail, let those jobs go down. How we run things should be a dialogue between the private and public sectors, and in a case like this, I think it's an example of the public sector, right? The people essentially saying, we actually do not like this practice. We don't want this to be the rules of the game. We want the rules of the game to change, to be more robust. And yeah, the market will, once it adapts to that, find a solution. And if the new rule set is a better rule set, then that should be a net good.
And what it also does, it's actually incentivize these companies to not put out a complete game. So they're going to give you half of the game, then they're going to sell you the next half. They're going to sell you the bills you need to compete for the game, within the game and all that stuff. Or they're going to sell you the vehicle that you need to travel to make it more efficient and stuff. So back in the day, one price, complete game, then they start working on the next one. Now, half a game, then you constantly patch and update and drop certain things to help you improve at a cost. So we're getting destroyed as gamers right now, man. We are getting finessed across the board, whether we like it or not. And this, again, this is not just for 2K. 2K is just one of the games I play that I experience in this on a daily basis. It's a game I mostly play, of course, but I do see this in other games as well. Sad to hear, it has become the norm over the past few years. And I would say it started with Fortnite, but of course it started without it. But Fortnite kind of make other companies start looking at it like, oh, okay, all right, so we could do this and get away with it.
Of course, none of this will matter if there's no enforcement. Because one country making a digital consumer policy often will find difficulty in enforcing it because you're just one little guy, Mr. Belgium, right? That's why even though Belgium has banned loot boxes, so many games simply just ignore that and still operate in the country. Like in World of Warcraft in the new raid, one of the bosses is basically a slot machine boss. We always have to joke that for the person in our team that's in Belgium, that boss just can't drop any loot. I don't know, there's an EU firewall or a Belgian firewall. That's a joke, but you get the point. As much as many people have kind of went, Belgium, yo, take him down. It hasn't really mattered because it's just Belgium, just one little guy. It's a bit different here, though. And that's because the EU is, 26 other countries. And also, in 2023, it was worth 25.7 billion euro in game revenues. That's a lot of revenues. And we know that their legislators are willing to take on the likes of Apple and Google when their rulings are being defied. They have done that. But more than that, the companies inside the EU are, part of a big global network. And that does mean that whenever USB-C cables become standardized in the EU, they then become standardized everywhere because of manufacturing limitations. I'm sure Apple would have loved to have continued just selling people lightning adapters in the States, but ultimately they seem to have saw the way the wind was blowing and made the big change to USB-C. No one wanted to have, of course, a whole factory just making EU-only phones. And Again, thinking about the impact that would have had on the whole ecosystem of manufacturing partners, blah, blah, blah. So you can see how with hardware, it does kind of make sense. We can see, though, software examples where it's not really the same thing. It's not like you can just go and get an emulator for your iPhone in America, but you can in the EU. So the question then is, will developers want to risk losing a large slice of that EU-derived money? Or will they simply have to ship a cut-down and less exploitative version of their in-game monetization to European countries? If so, it puts them in a fun little dilemma where the American gamer may get a transparently worse deal.
This has been the case for 2K for the past few years, because I've spoke about this already. Right, with that same Belgium thing, yes, 2K do drop a different version of the game for that country, for that area. They've been dropping a different one, which gives you more rewards, but you can't spend on certain things because they are not, like, I think my team might be a little bit more restricted there and stuff like that. But there is a different version of the game which actually gives you more BC initially. But I ain't gonna front with you. It's gonna be interesting to see how they navigate this when this gets off. It's really gonna be interesting.
Than, say, the European game. And then you can say, well, compare your store to mine. My one is a bit more respectful, doesn't have as much FOMO, doesn't have as many tricksy bundles and things that basically feel like a scam. And that'll be a bad look. That's the dilemma that these companies face, and in a way, it's all thanks to a game about horses. So, hero of the day, horse girls. I guess that's a thing. Okay, tell you what though, if you want another story, another big, grand, juicy
Alright, yo, man. But let me know what y'all think, man. I ain't gonna lie, I'm excited for this. I am excited for this. Great video. I will put the link to the full thing in the description. Y'all make sure and check it out. Shout out to my guy, Big Boy IQ. It will be interesting to see where gaming goes in the next few years. I anticipate that these companies already know this was coming. That's why they were probably doubling and tripling down as much as they were. Or people in certain areas might have to force people who represent them to actually start putting this forward, to make these type of moves to protect the consumer at the end of the day. But let me know what y'all think about the video. Y'all know it's your boy saying, first time to the channel, like, share, subscribe. How blessed and be safe out there, y'all. The notification bell is key. Peace.